Hello everyone, welcome back to the channel. So tonight we are going to be discussing the Idaho 4 student slayings. Once again, we are going to be theorizing, speculating on what could have happened to Ethan, Kaylee, Madison, and Xana in the early morning hours of November 13th, 2022, who the perpetrator could be, as well as all of the possibilities, which are endless, who is responsible for the crime. So tonight, I would like to bring up the theory. One of the things I've heard, what is being said, about a possible disgruntled neighbor. Could a neighbor of these kids be responsible for this crime? There's been a lot of conflicting stories with people coming out 4 weeks after the crime scene occurred, of them hearing screams in the middle of the night, an unusual silence that came from 1122 King Road in Moscow, Idaho. The motivation behind the neighbor or a neighbor not pointing fingers at anyone in particular, but just a neighbor. The kids were too loud. We've heard that the house was a party house, notorious place where students would stay up late, drink, party in the early morning hours. And then right next to the house, you have this apartment complex where a lot of regular citizens have jobs. They have to get up early for work throughout the week. And that would be the motivation that I could think of. One of the motivations I could think of behind a neighbor being responsible for this crime. You would then have to question, if a neighbor did this, was there a history of futility with one of the students or the students that live there at 1122 King Road? And one of the neighbors, did one of the neighbors file complaints against the residents at that house? Noise complaints. We've heard recently that neighbors have came out and said that, again, the house was eerily silent that night, when it's normally bursting of people partying. Lively activity going on, even in the early morning hours of 2 a.m. I believe in one of my videos yesterday, I did read a segment from a source that said that one of the neighbors, 4 weeks after the crime scene or the crime occurred, came out and said that they arrived home late that night from work November 13th. And they said themselves the house was quiet, which was unusual. I'm just paraphrasing. It was unusual for that house to be quiet. And then 4 hours later, around 4 a.m., they claim they heard a scream coming from that house or from the proximity, the same location of 1122 King Road. I don't get the statement because it's a complete contradiction. If this neighbor, it really makes me look at the neighbor more, whoever said this, because they said from the beginning it was unusual for the house to be eerily quiet. There's no activity going on over there. But then later on goes to say further that they hear screams. So first you notice that there's no activity going on at a place where there's normally people interacting with each other. Loud enough where it can be heard from the apartment complex across the street. And then you hear a scream, but you dismiss the scream because, oh, it must be someone partying. Well, I thought you said you didn't think anybody was over there partying or anybody was over there at the house doing whatever. You would think that the neighbor, whoever said this, I don't know who said this. There's so many names in this case, but this neighbor in particular, you know who I'm talking about. It makes me personally look at him more. What he said does not make any sense, and the story keeps on changing. But getting back to the point of one of the neighbors, just a neighbor in general, being responsible for this crime, another thing you have to think about was they died of a stabbing. Stabbings are very intimate ways of killing somebody. Was that neighbor that upset at these kids that they plotted out how to sneak in the house, how to wait until they got home, possibly? I mean, there's a lot of time and effort that goes into this once you really think about it. Now, don't get me wrong. It's possible, but do I think it's likely? I don't think so. I don't think that a neighbor would do this type of crime. One would think that if they had a distraught neighbor or a disgruntled neighbor, that the noise is keeping them up. I want you guys to think logically about things whenever it pertains to true crime theories. One would think that the neighbor, if anything, is just going to shoot a pew-pew over at the house to shut these kids up and to just scare them. Maybe they didn't intend on, taking the lives of 3 people. They just wanted their peace and tranquility. That, to me, is not a motivation of brutally stabbing 4 people. If that is the case, if it turns out that one of the residents that lives in that location is responsible for this. I would like to know why. Was there prior arguments, futility going on with the students and neighbors? A track record of disgruntled behavior. They must have had one pissed off neighbor to do something like this. Again, I don't think it's a neighbor. I do think, however, that it was a personal crime, a stabbing, again, stabbing somebody. That's a personal crime. That's very intimate. So it's going to take somebody that is most likely familiar with the victim, someone that the victim was close to or knew well enough to be close to, or the perpetrator just wanted to be with the victim. Doesn't really take it. But I'm curious to hear your thoughts and opinions and below about the neighbor theory. Could one of the neighbors, again, it sounds crazy once you really break it down, but that's why I'm saying they must have had one pissed off neighbor, someone they really pissed off. They got the right one. And I'm not disrespecting the dead, guys. I'm just saying they literally got the right one. Someone that is off kilter enough. If you look at them the wrong way, they just want to cut your head off. They have one of those type of neighbors. I'm tired of these kids keeping me up. I'm tired of it. There must have been a past record of the discord in that neighborhood for somebody to take it this far. And if you want to go further and speculate that one of the neighbors could possibly be lurking still in that area, in the night they did this, they patiently waited until these students got back to the house. And the reason why they know the layout so well is because, well, duh, they live right beside it. As soon as they look out the window, right there is a house. They can almost see through the window. So they've had plenty of time to plan, scheme, ponder on how am I going to get into that house, get into those rooms, and do what I need to do. Perhaps if it was a neighbor, their focus was just on the people that were on the second and third floor. Those are the people that's causing noise. They're causing noise. I don't know who else lives in the house. I don't know if anybody else lives in the house. I don't care. These two rooms is where the noise is coming from. So whoever is in these two rooms, I'm taking out. Again, you have to think like the perpetrator. I ain't gonna waste time going downstairs and even considering doing this to somebody else. because I don't want to get caught. Plus, I don't even know if there's people downstairs. All I know is that there's people upstairs causing noise. So I just want to get in and out of here as quick as possible. Jump right back over to my apartment complex. Some way, somehow. Discard the evidence somewhere. And I'll just get away with it. Who knows what happened to him? Could have, and that's if if it's one of the disgruntled neighbors, if it is a disgruntled neighbor, that's exactly what they would want people to think. Oh, it must have been someone that these kids were meeting off the internet, or a crazy ex, or a stalker, or maybe someone just got drunk or high and did this. Someone just acted a fool. And no one is suspecting the perpetrator lurking too close for comfort. Right underneath your nose. So once again, I'm curious to hear your thoughts and opinions on the Idaho forced slayings. Hopefully we find out answers soon for this case, and we get answers so the families can get closure and properly begin the grieving process. So my thoughts go out to the families of Ethan, Kaylee, Madison, and Xana. Guys, thank you for watching. If you have tuned in, make sure that you give the video a thumbs up on your way out. Subscribe, smash that bell notification, and like the video. Arrivederci.